The barricade shuddered under the impact of a plasma ram, sending dust drifting through the beams of frantic work lights. But Kaelen didn't look at the reinforced door. He only looked at Vexia. She sat on the edge of his workbench, her skin shifting in soft, fractured colors like light through cracked glass. The bioluminescent blood that had terrified him hours ago now seemed like the only steady thing in the universe. He reached out, his oil-stained thumb grazing the sharp angle of her cheekbone. It was a jagged contrast, human grit against alien geometry, but the spark that jumped between them was undeniable. "They are through the outer lock," Vexia whispered, her voice like distant chimes breaking. She leaned into his touch, a terrifyingly human gesture from a creature of the stars. "Kaelen, you must leave me. The Dominion does not forgive." "No," he breathed, stepping into her space, shielding her body with his own as the door buckled again. The heat of her fever radiated against his chest, binding them in the small, trembling room. "I don't care about their forgiveness." He rested his forehead against hers, the connection electric and absolute. "We started this together. We finish it together." It was the kind of madness that only made sense in retrospect. Just 6 hours earlier, the galaxy hadn't cared if either of them lived or died. The docking ring of Orbit 7 was a deafening monument to commerce. Engines screamed, vendors shouted, and thousands of boots slammed against the metal deck in a rhythm of aggressive indifference. It was a classic space opera setting, vast and unfeeling. Kaelen moved through the crowd with the practiced efficiency of a local. He was a mechanic, invisible to the high-born and the corporate elites. Survival meant ignoring the cracks until the cracks started bleeding light. The crowd flowed around the collapsed cargo barrier like water around a stone. It was a perfect display of the bystander effect. Hundreds of sentient beings saw the wreckage, registered the tragedy, and chose the safety of apathy. To stop was to lose time. To care was to lose credits. But Kaelen stopped. She lay crumpled near a support strut. She was wrong in ways that made the eye twitch too tall, limbs articulated at angles that suggested speed and grace, now shattered. Faint blue light pooled beneath her, pulsing with a weak, irregular rhythm. A Dominion patrol drone hovered nearby, scanned her broken form, and flickered yellow. "Non-priority life form," it announced, its voice flat and synthetic. "Discard protocol active." Kaelen froze. The dystopian reality of the Aethelgard Dominion was simple: perfection or disposal. But as he looked at the alien woman, he didn't see waste. He saw pain. "Hey!" he said, his voice cutting through the ambient roar. The sheer HFY arrogance of speaking to trash made a passing trader stumble. Kaelen crouched, ignoring the warning lights. Up close, he could see the burns along her side, military grade. Her fingers twitched. "Don't touch it," a man nearby muttered, not slowing down. "Those things explode." Kaelen looked up, eyes narrowing. "She's bleeding." That's not our problem. It was a test of moral courage, occurring on a scratched floor under flickering halogen. Kaelen swore under his breath and slid his arms beneath her shoulders and knees. She was heavier than she looked. A dense weave of unknown biology and hidden cybernetics. "You don't even know what species she is," someone called out. "I know what hurt looks like," Kaelen grunted, lifting her. The crowd parted, not out of respect, but confusion. This was first contact for many of them, not with an alien, but with altruism. They expected a soldier to fight back. Instead, they got a witness who refused to look away. A security officer stepped forward, hand drifting to his stun baton. "Citizen, you are not authorized to salvage Dominion property." "Write me a fine," Kaelen snapped, not breaking stride. He carried her through the docking ring, his arms shaking, jaw clenched. Every step hurt. Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea. Helping a courier of the Veyari Combine, though he didn't know it yet, could mark him for life. But he was just one mechanic against an empire armed with nothing but a wrench and a bad habit of caring. He kicked the door of his workshop shut behind him and laid her gently onto his workbench, clearing tools with one sweeping motion. The air in the room shifted, charged with the sudden intimacy of the act. He had saved her. Now he had to keep her alive. The blast tore the magnetic locks from the frame, throwing Kaelen backward into a stack of shipping crates. He hit the floor hard, the taste of copper filling his mouth, but he was scrambling up before the smoke cleared. He grabbed a heavy mag wrench, his knuckles white, his stance wide and desperate. Vexia screamed his name, a sound that harmonized with the shrill alarm of the station. "Do it!" Kaelen yelled over the roar of boot jets entering the room. "Vexia, now!" She didn't look at the soldiers leveling their plasma rifles at Kaelen's chest. She looked at him one last, searing glance of apology and devotion before slamming her hand onto the exposed station interface node. The air in the workshop didn't just change, it shattered. Vexia's skin flared blinding white. The connection wasn't digital, it was visceral. She wasn't just hacking a terminal, she was pouring her own consciousness into the grid. The Aethelgard Dominion soldiers hesitated, their helmet optics glitching as a surge of raw xenofiction data flooded the local network. "Target the interface!" the squad leader barked, raising his rifle. Kaelen didn't think. He threw himself into the line of fire, swinging the wrench with the savage desperation of a man protecting his heart. The plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, searing the fabric of his flight suit. But he didn't fall. He stood his ground, a barrier of flesh and bone against the cold perfection of the Dominion. Then the shooting stopped. It wasn't a malfunction, it was the broadcast. Across Orbit 7, on every screen, holopad, and tactical visor, the feed took over. It wasn't a weapon code or a virus. It was a memory. It was the footage from the docking ring, grainy, unpolished, and undeniable. The galaxy watched as the Dominion drone discarded Vexia like trash. Then they saw Kaelen. They saw a human walk into the danger when everyone else looked away. They saw the way he held her, not as cargo, but as a life. In the workshop, the squad leader lowered his weapon. The silence was louder than the explosion had been. This was the true power of empathy weaponized. The Dominion relied on the narrative that they were the apex of order and that weakness deserved erasure. But Kaelen had broken that narrative. He had introduced a variable they couldn't calculate: altruism. "Command," the squad leader said, his voice trembling slightly over the comms. "We have a situation." The situation was resistance. Outside the workshop, the heavy thrum of machinery grew louder. It wasn't engines, it was people, dock workers, traders, and travelers species from a dozen systems were jamming the corridors, blocking the support teams. The bystander effect had shattered. The broadcast had turned 1,000,000 passive observers into active participants. This was civil disobedience on a planetary scale, a sudden, crushing weight of soft power that no amount of plasma fire could disperse without creating a martyr. The soldiers backed out of the room. To fire now, with the entire Galactic Politics Forum watching the live feed, would be political suicide. Kaelen dropped the wrench. His knees gave out, but he didn't hit the floor. Vexia was there. She caught him, her strength surprising for someone so delicate. The light under her skin had softened to a warm, steady pulse. "You're crazy," she whispered, pressing her forehead against his uninjured shoulder. "You stood in front of a plasma rifle. You uploaded your soul to a public server," Kaelen rasped, wincing as the adrenaline faded and the pain set in. "I think we're even." He looked up at her, breathless. The room was ruined, his shoulder was smoking, and they were likely going to be buried in legal summons for the next decade. But as he looked at Vexia, seeing the way she looked at him like he was the only star in the sky, he knew he'd do it again. "They're retreating," Vexia said, reading the data scrolling behind her eyes. "The Dominion is recalling the fleet. They cannot fight a war against a story that makes them the villains." Kaelen laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Humanity, fuck yeah," he muttered, closing his eyes as she ran a cool hand through his hair. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," Kaelen said, leaning into her touch, "that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is give a damn."